Welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is filmmaker Gabriel Foster Prior. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, you've come on to talk about your movie, The Bystanders, and you've also come to share 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. So before we get into that conversation, and before we get into some of the details about your film, do you want to give us a brief synopsis to what The Bystanders is all about?
Okay, sure, yeah. So The Bystanders, it's been described as a kind of British sci-fi comedy. The concept is bystanders are kind of like guardian angels. They don't look like angels. They don't have wings. They don't have halos, but we all have one. They're invisible to us, but they're meant to look after us and affect our lives. But in the case of the bystanders, they're not necessarily very good at looking after us. They're quite irresponsible. They're quite reckless. They sometimes drink on the job. And kind of crucially also, they're quite, a lot of them don't like the humans that they have to look after. On an individual case-by-case basis, some of these guardian angels hate their subjects, but also in a kind of more general basis, the bystanders have got a bit of a problem with the modern human in the sense that they're always on their phones and always looking at screens, and they've got quite boring, but also because they've got smartphones, they've started filming things. So bystanders are more likely to get caught out if they accidentally carry a pint glass across a room and someone sees it floating through the air. So it's kind of a buddy movie between 2 of these bystanders. There's a enthusiastic newbie and a kind of weary vet bystander who gets assigned to look after him and show him the ropes. And they have a different kind of approach to looking after the humans, and they swap subjects, and their squabbles kind of interfere with the lives of the humans that they look after. And the humans become like pawns in a kind of deranged game of chess that they're playing, trying to one-up each other and get what they want from their own bystander world.
Indeed. So, and how can people see The Bystanders?
It's on digital at the moment. So YouTube and Apple, I think, and Microsoft Store. Mm-hmm. My friend, I said that to my friend the other day. He's like, Microsoft, what? I think that means you could watch it on your Xbox.
Indeed.
So, yeah. But yeah, we did a small cinema release at the end of last year. We did a year of festivals. So it's been really nice showing it in that kind of context. But now it's really cool to have a chance for like anyone to watch it and be able to watch it anywhere within the UK anyway.
So let's take you back to the beginning then. In terms of making this movie, what for you was the kernel of the idea that you started out with that gave us the film The Bystanders? Where does it start for you in your imagination?
Well, there's a link to one of the films, so I might save telling you the full story till then. But okay. I mean, or shall I tell you now? But yeah, no, I think I did want to do. More generally speaking, I think I wanted to do a kind of comedy, kind of concept with a concept, like a kind of mixed genre kind of comedy. There was an element of like the kind of things that I liked, that I thought Britain's really good at in terms of more often than not you get it in TV rather than films, I would say.
So, e.g. what are Britain good at?
Well, okay, so maybe not the concept thing, but in terms of like the sense of humor and in terms of the kind of visually creative filmmaking or TV making, like something like Peep Show is actually very creative, and it's like just the idea of filming everything, point of view is a very creative choice, and obviously it's like amazingly written and amazingly performed. But also, you have like the kind of the IT crowd or Black Books or things like that, which you actually kind of there's a lot of really good visual, playful visual kind of comedy as well in those things. And obviously Edgar Wright, Spaced and then onto his movies. So he's someone that's doing it in movies as well. And it's just something that me and Jack Hughes, who I wrote the script with, we both really like. And I feel like, considering how good Britain is at doing that, producing people that do that, there's not that many films that do that. So it was kind of, we saw that as a kind of ambition to.
What's your for people that don't have a writing partner, what's the process between you and your writing partner when you're developing ideas? How does it work?
So me and Jack went to school together. We did A-levels together. I think the first time we tried to write together, we were meant to be revising for our A-level maths exam.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of revising, we wrote a script for a film called The Golden Calculator, which was about an underground maths tournament. That one never got made. We started making it, I think. We never finished it. But we also wrote a short film called Time Toilet about a house party where if you go to the toilet and flush the toilet, it sends you 5 minutes back in time. So that was the kind of level of that was the kind of things we were writing. And then we didn't really do it again for a long time. When I was trying to, thinking about I wanted to do this, what was my first feature as a director, and I kind of knew what kind of type of film I wanted to make. And I just thought that, I remembered me and Jack writing together, and I always thought he's really funny, and he's obviously expressed an interest in this kind of world. So I just, we decided to do it together. And in terms of the process together, because we're friends, and we would just meet up, and it was quite casual, and we would do some writing and then we'd do some hanging out, and it was usually the together bit was usually discussions, and kind of the actual work we did together was maybe more outlining, or maybe character breakdowns. In terms of actually writing, I would say we would do that separately. I think that in my head, it seems like I do a little bit more of the structure stuff and Jack does a little bit more of the dialogue. But I don't think it's really that simple, because there's times when we would both do both. But I remember sending quite first drafty stuff to Jack and then him making it a lot better.
Okay. But what do you remember being the main story? Because obviously one of the things that hopefully people understand from your introduction is that this is I guess the for want of a better expression, is a grounded sci-fi kind of thing, because it's a high concept with what do you call it? Low cost. It's not expensive to deliver to execute what your idea is. The high concept is what makes it work. So while trying to write that as a screenplay, what do you remember being the main storytelling challenges for you two?
We were thinking of it more as a kind of concept, a comedy with a concept, rather than as a sci-fi with jokes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we weren't, but then aesthetically, it's ended up quite sci-fi in the sense that, the grade has got some kind of sci-fi quality, and the score has got, is influenced by 1950s sci-fi B movies and things like that. So there's a lot of sci-fi kind of vibes by the end. But when we're actually writing it, one thing we weren't concerned about was we didn't want to do one of those films where you're almost writing as if you're going to have a sequel, where you feel like you spend the first 2/3 of the film just entirely world building, and then you get a little bit of story at the end. We really didn't want to do that. So we kind of deliberately rushed by almost made a joke of, having the tutor Frank be like, yeah, you don't piss, you don't eat, you don't shit, you don't sleep, you wear one of these coats, I bet you got some questions like, are you dead? But whatever, let's go on with it, let's go to the pub, kind of. So we make a joke of the fact that we're leaving some questions kind of unanswered about what the actual, lore is of the world. But we just felt like we wanted it to be a story about these two characters, and we think that's what people would respond to most. So
I think that's one of the things that certainly one of the things you could applaud about your film is that the provenance of the world that you've created is very clear, very, as you said, very quickly. So in that sense, when you've made the film and you're in the edit, what do you feel like you discovered about the story that wasn't there when you were writing it? What new things came out of that process of bringing the film together?
There's one very clear one that I can remember, because we did have a pause and we went back to do a little bit more shooting.
Okay.
It was like a forced pause. It was a forced pause, but we gave us a chance to actually do a rough cut with some scenes missing and stuff. But then also, while we were, because knowing we were going to go back and get the missing scenes, it gave us a chance to also film anything we thought was missing. And there was one section of the film. So you have this main character, Pete is the name of the main character, and it's quite, what Paul Schrader would call a monocular narrative. It's like a very, he's in every, he's in most scenes. And there was one bit of the film where he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's when Frank, his tutor, is kind of scheming against him because he's pissed off he wouldn't swap subjects back with him.
Yeah.
So there's a section of the film we thought, it might be quite fun because we're with Pete. If we, the audience, like, wait, what's going on? We don't know what's going on. He doesn't know what's going on. And then when we watch the rough cut, I think that's such a really hard thing to pull off.
Yes.
And I just felt like, especially when you're watching a, slightly scrappy, comedy first time film, like I don't know if you have the confidence in the narrator that you're going to be like, I'm confused, but I'm meant to be confused,
Thank you for sharing that about the process of making the Bystanders. It was a really good insight. We're going to move into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Film number 1 is 2006's London to Brighton. Do you want to share with us why that is such an important film for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, to start with, for those people that haven't seen it, it's a British film. It's quite kind of gripping kind of drama. There's a sex worker and a young girl who get basically caught up with some gangsters and have to leave London and go and try and hide out in Brighton. And it's just very nicely acted, very well written, very nicely acted, nicely edited, nicely shot. Just a very good British film. It's takes place, so there's 2 timelines happening. There's the escape, but you're also finding out what actually happened on the night at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a very well put together film. But for me, I took the kind of brief quite literally, rather than, I'm glad you didn't ask your favourite films.
Oh, no, I don't want favourite films.
It's an impossible question. Actually, like someone asked me a favourite, I was thinking, a better question is like your favourite films with the colour blue in it. That would be a better question because you could actually get specific. But, how it affected your adult life. So basically, I went to college in Brighton to did an art foundation degree. I was going to do a graphic design degree was the original intention. My father does graphic design and I did it as a freelancer when I was a teenager and taught myself all the programs and everything like that. And then a teacher at Art Foundation saw some short films I was making with friends and it was her suggestion to apply to film schools.
Oh, wow.
So I did that and I got into Edinburgh College of Art. So this was 2006 and summer 2006, my mother was editor of Total Theatre magazine. So she goes to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. So I went up with her. And at that point, the Edinburgh Film Festival happened at the same time as the Fringe. So I went up to just get a sense of Edinburgh before I started uni. And I went to pick some random films to go and see at the film festival. I think I picked London to Brighton because I was born in London and grew up in Brighton. So it seemed like, why not? It's the 2 places I know. I knew nothing about it. And I sat and I watched the film and there was a Q&A afterwards. And he talked about how he made it and he talked about the budget, which I checked online and it was higher than I remember him saying in the Q&A, but that's always the way, isn't it, with the online listings. But it was an amount of money that was just fathomable to me as a 21-year-old, whereas I always thought about the movies that me and my friends were making on mini DV. That was one world. And then there was the movies that you saw on DVD and VHS.
Of course.
And they were multi-million pound things. And it just seemed like another world, and a world that just was so far away from what I was doing, and a world that didn't seem like something I could ever really reach. It just seemed unattainable. And then listening to him talk about how he made that film, I think that was the first time I actually thought to myself, I can imagine making an actual feature film that people see at a cinema and buy on DVD. Obviously, it took me too long to actually make my first film, so it's not out on DVD because no one really buys DVDs anymore. But but I did have it was the Cameo Cinema in Edinburgh. I didn't get to play my film there, but I've played films I've edited there, so I've had that nice experience. But I did kind of sit in that cinema and think to myself, like, right, I now have a goal. I want to be sitting back in this cinema in Cameo, and I want to have a film that I've worked on, and I did get to do that with a film Lucid, which I edited, which was in the Edinburgh Film Festival in 10 years after that in 2016. So I kind of that was a nice full circle thing there. But I think that was just such a great Q&A to have witnessed just before I started film school.
Yeah.
Because it means I went into film school with more of a clear end goal than I would have had.
You probably cleared up a lot of fog that you would have had to go through while discovering what making a modern film might be. Because this is like the cusp of where technology begins to become affordable.
Yeah, I watched it recently, and I was wondering if he shot it on digital or film, but it actually looks like it was shot on film.
Oh, it was shot on film, yeah.
Yeah. Really nice looking film. But there was just something about the way he talked. He was just so down to earth, and
there's your
There's your
first 5 minutes.
I'm grateful to that Q&A because it really did. Yeah,
I can totally understand. Right then, moving swiftly along, sir. For your next film, we're jumping back to 1987 for Wings of Desire. Now, I'm guessing this is where you might tell us more about the origins of the Bystanders as well.
Yeah. So obviously I didn't see this one at the cinema because I would have been one. But my mum, I think, probably is the one that got me. I know she's a big Wim Wenders fan. So I think my mum probably either lent me her DVD or got me one when I was a teenager. So I first watched it when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And then I watched it again in my mid-20s or late 20s. So I had Guardian Angels kind of on my mind. And I think it was partly because it was around the time I was kind of thinking about the notion of doing my first feature film.
Yeah.
Or try to write my first feature film. And I think there's also an element of nominative determinism. I think if your name is Gabriel, as a kid, you probably think about...
I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, no, I didn't really think of it until Q&As. People ask me in Q&As at film festivals. But I do think there's some truth in it because you probably think about it a tad more as a kid.
Yeah.
Or like adults talk to you about angels a tad more than they would normally. So you're like, you like daydream about Guardian Angels a little bit more than you would. And then as an adult, it's probably just like lingering there in the background. So with that, and also having recently, watched The Wings of Desire, I was with my brother, who ended up doing all the VFX on my film.
Right.
But me and him were just playing computer games, and we'd spent, I think, half an hour choosing on exactly the right armor for our character in a RPG, and it was which stats on the armor exactly, build the boat. I think I really genuinely think we'd been doing like just this one choice had taken us half an hour. And it occurred to me, God, if we had actually had Guardian Angels, they would hate us so much. And I just kind of made myself chuckle with that thought. And I put that down as the spark.
Wow.
And then we did also take some... Jack also really likes Wings of Desire. So obviously it's a very different film to what we did with Bystanders. But because it's an Angels film and because we really like it, we did try and kind of homage it in different ways. So one of the things we did is in most of the Wings of Desire is in black and white. He's an angel that wants to join the human world in that film. And when he does get to join the human world, it transitions from black and white into color.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to do the same thing and have black and white for the angel world and color for the human world. In the end, we actually switched it. So we have the opposite. We have black and white for the human world and color for the angel world. But that mixing of black and white and color was directly inspired by Wings of Desire. And it's also just a film I really like. I've seen it at different periods of my life. Like every few years, I'll give it a rewatch. And have you seen it?
Yeah, a long time ago though. Long time ago.
Yeah, it's like you have to be in the right mood, I guess. It's quite slow and meditative, but it's like because the angels can listen to human thoughts, so a lot of it's just kind of drifting around 1980s East Berlin and listening to people's thoughts in libraries and on the tube. And,
yeah.
But it's one of those films that I think it's a film that could only be a film, and I always love films like that. Like another film that I didn't choose on my list, but is one of my favorite films is like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the Michel Gondry, Charlie Kaufman, and that's one of the things I always say about that film is it works as a film, and it wouldn't work in any other medium nearly as well, They're using all the cinema kind of, all the good things that are good about the medium of cinema. And I think Wings of Desire does that as well, the way it's kind of, being able to hear
thinking about Wings of Desire being an influence on, on the big idea behind Bystanders. What made you go for the big difference is your Bystanders are a lot more hands-on, for want of a better expression, than the angels in Wings of Desire, aren't they? So where did that element come from then, to be almost like meddling as opposed to looking out for you?
So I don't think this has found its way actually into the film very much, but the very, 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 like one of the very earlier ideas, but they were also kind of representations of the Higgs boson particles, the quote unquote God particles that they're looking for in the Large Hadron. So there is a mention of the Large Hadron Collider at the end when they're sitting on the rooftop. And also there's a very small reference in the surname. So it's Peter Weir and Frank Boson, which is named after, there you go.
Oh my word! We'll have to end on that thought.
Yeah, but they're Weir and Barron. Sorry, Weir and Barron, Frank Barron and Peter Weir, and Weir and Barron are the middle names of the Peter Higgs and Francois Boson, the discoverers of the God particles. So there you go.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're gonna fast forward now for your final choice, 2001's Richard Linklater animation Waking Life, which is a beautiful meditative film. But tell me, what was it? Why is this important to you? What impact?
Have you seen this one as well?
Oh, I had a Saturday afternoon where I'd had it in my watch pile for as long as I could remember. And me and my wife were hungover, put it on, and it was one of the best film experiences I've ever had.
That's cool. It's cool that you've seen all the films. Your film knowledge is very strong. So there is a Bystanders link, but I do agree with you. I think it's like, again, it's one of those things that, it's very, you can't really imagine it in another form, but it's also a very strange thing. It's kind of almost like a philosophy kind of. Oh,
it's cerebral. It's cerebral as hell. And that's what does it justice.
Yeah. It's kind of various philosophers or modern philosophers, and they're all like animation over the top of them, but they're giving like mini lectures. So it's almost like a kind of educational, it's almost like a philosophy educational video more than it is a narrative feature film.
Yeah.
But, in the kind of Richard Linklater slacker mumblecore kind of world, but then also with rotoscope animation over the top. So it's a very unique film. And, I really like Richard Linklater. I really like, it was really cool to play the film in Austin because it was the Richard Linklater link there. And I'm he's always someone I've been a big fan of. But the reason I picked it in relation to, talking to you about the Bystanders and films that change your life, one of the kind of elements of the film that people have been talking about most, I would say, in like interviews and podcasts and stuff, is the animation element that we did to the Bystanders, the teleportation. We did hand-painted rotoscope animation to do the teleportation effects in the Bystanders.
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, me and Jack Hughes, who I wrote the script with, we did that together when we were teenagers. So we watched Waking Life, and we loved it, and we loved the animation style as well as the philosophy nuggets that you get from it. And we wanted to give it a go. So we, as teenagers, we got the printer out, got the paint brushes out, started printing out frames, scanning them back in. And like, as I told you earlier, I did graphic design when I was younger. So I knew how to use the programs well enough to, to kind of manipulate them to do what I wanted to do and, scan the images back in and turn it back into video and all that kind of thing. So it's something we did as teenagers. And then when it came to do this film, because we were writing it together, when we knew we wanted to do some like teleportation, we were like, oh, what about that animation that we used to play around with when we were younger? So that's the kind of direct influence, I would say, on that. I think it's quite. I was watching it back, The Waking Life, and I want to research like how they did it, because it seemed more computer animation than I remembered. But I'm sure there's some hand stuff. But what we do actually is like physically printing out and painting onto the frames. But the basic technique is the same thing, which is rotoscoping, which is basically where there is video footage, and then you're tracing over the top of video footage. So it's not animation in the sense of creating something out of nothing. It's animation as a like layer over the top of video.
But that's a while since I've seen Waking Life, but if I remember rightly, you've kind of got the sort of sense of a film as a film is a dream. The film, and in a way,
it works well.
In a way, what he did with Slacker, which was a means to an end, where you're basically passing the baton of the story on as opposed to the singular narrative. He sort of almost has perfected it in Waking Life in a way, the way he passes you around to get the different points of view.
Yeah, I like that as well. Like he's got kind of aerial shots that are also animated, where you kind of, in that way you might do in a dream, you kind of fly between different. But I think having it animated, having rotoscoping in Waking Life, what that allows is it allows for the backgrounds that can kind of morph and they can kind of change.
Yeah,
and like things can kind of objects can be put down on the table 1 minute and then disappear all of a sudden. So there's that kind of lack of continuity that I think to me really works well as a
which in a way is the way that our subconscious plays with us when we do dream.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels, that's what I think one of the things that makes it feel really like genuinely like a dream, because there's that lack of continuity as well as this just kind of general floatiness. It's very floaty, isn't it? Waking Life.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like I say. It's memory for me is just is this film washing over me, and it felt good, because usually that's like describing something. There's the 5 minutes. That's like describing something that's boring, but it was far from boring. It was like getting a massage on my brain.
And it was interesting rewatching it, having not seen it for a while, and going, oh, those philosophers saying those little things. I really definitely took that on board when I was a teenager, because I think some of my life choices could be explained by having heard someone say that.
Well, look, sir, that is the end of 3 films that have impacted everything in adult life. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and about the films that have had impact on you, and thank you for giving us an insight into how, in some of the aspects of making of The Bystanders. It just gives me to say thank you very much for being a guest on the Britflicks podcast.
Thanks for having me.